Hey guys, what a year for trials. We have the trial of Letitia Stout getting underway, and now we have the trial of Jacqueline and Trezell West. So, yesterday was the opening arguments, and we're going to go over those because we haven't had a lot of information on this case in quite some time due to the gag order. But we heard some stuff in that opening argument that is going to give us an idea of some of what we're going to learn as this trial progresses. So, really quick recap. Orrin and Orson West, aka Sincere and Classic, were reported missing on December 21st of 2020 by their adoptive parents, Trezell and Jacqueline West, out of California City, California. Now, I have always tried to refer to the boys with their birth names, which was Sincere and Classic, because if these people truly did harm them, I didn't want to call them by the names Orrin and Orson West, the names given to them by their potential killers. It didn't seem right. But I think as the trial progresses, I'm going to have to refer to them as such because that is how they're going to be referred to in the trial. That was their legal name at the time of their disappearance. So so there won't be a lot of confusion. I think we're going to just go with that. So at the time that the boys went missing, of course, there was a search, and the boys never turned up. And to this day, their bodies, living or otherwise, have never been found. But the parents were arrested despite no bodies. And our standing trial and a no body trial, it's rare. But in this case, the state believes they have enough proof to show that not only did Jacqueline and Trezell cause the death of Orrin and Orson West, but that it was 3 months prior to the time that they reported them missing. Now, if you think back to when the affidavits were leaked, one of the things that was really disturbing that caught a lot of people's attention was there was an allegation that these two had a minor participate in the crime. This gave us nightmarish thoughts and images in our minds, knowing that Trezell and Jacqueline in that home had 2 biological children and 2 other adopted children besides Orin and Orson. We were conjuring up all kinds of horrific images of what that statement meant. Did they have one of their other adoptive children or one of their biological children help in the crime? And how and why would they kill 2, the youngest of their children? So Orrin and Orson came to the West home back in 2018, and they were adopted 1 year later. They were taken from their biological mother after one of the boys had been harmed while being cared for by a babysitter while mom was at work. And mom didn't have a long history with the Department of Family and Children's, and a lot of people were really upset that these children were even taken and put up for adoption and thought that they should have been returned to the biological mother. Now, there was some stuff going on, after they were removed, supposedly, and I can't confirm, she was inconsistent with visits, and then there was some issue that the parenting plan called for no marijuana use, but she stated she had a marijuana card for health purposes. There was just some stuff going on. But the end result is these children were placed for adoption and her parental rights were severed. And they went to the West home where they were adopted a year later. Trezell and Jacqueline already were licensed foster parents and had other adoptive children. So on paper, they probably seemed like the perfect home, perfect fit for these 2 little children now in need of permanency. But the situation would turn pretty grim pretty quickly. because we only get to 2020 before these boys go missing. One of the things that was brought up by the state in the opening arguments was that Trezell and Jacqueline were living solely off of the income provided to them by the state in the form of adoption subsidies for their 4 adopted children. The amount that they were receiving came out to $4,000 a month. When they lived in Bakersfield, which is where they lived before they bought the home in California City, the median income for Bakersfield in 2020 was about $30,000 a year. When they moved to California City, the median income there for families was about $22,000. So at $4,000 a month, it's roughly, 48? I'm not a mathematician. 48,000 a year, maybe? They were living pretty well for the area that they were living in. And a lot of people speculate that they only took in these boys for the money. However, they would have been receiving money either way, whether they adopted them or not, because as foster parents, they would have been getting a monthly financial reimbursement for the children. So why go the extra mile and actually adopt them if they didn't care about them or they didn't want them? Well, it's one of two things. Either they looked at as guaranteed income, because as a transitional foster home, the kids can come and go, whereas if they adopted them, that was guaranteed income until the children were grown. That is one possibility. The other possibility is that they just truly wanted to have a large family and that they went into it with pure motives and something tragic would later happen. Trezell and Jacqueline, the way that the dynamics of their home was that Jacqueline was a stay-at-home mom, and she was the primary caregiver for the children, although Trezell at some point wasn't working outside the home. So I guess he would have been a stay-at-home dad. But he was an artist, is how he would describe himself, and he was pursuing music. So maybe he put a lot of time and effort into that. I don't know. He was allegedly trying to sell some of his music online. Trezell was described by, at least by the real estate agent that sold them the home in California City, as somewhat of a conspiracy person. You know, he very much believed in living off the grid, didn't want the children in school. He wanted them to basically learn at home and not be influenced by the propaganda that he believed was taking place in the school system. So here is Jacqueline living in this pretty rural place, now in charge of caring for 6 children and homeschooling them, while Trezell is allegedly trying to become a music star. The day that the children went missing, we're told that Jacqueline was wrapping Christmas gifts, and the children were sent outside so that they wouldn't see the gifts. But we're only told that the 2 youngest ones are sent outside to play. So where are all the other children who I would assume also can't see the gifts being wrapped? It was a strange story. When the police went there and they looked outside where the children were allegedly playing, they did not find any children's footprints, but they did find adult footprints. And when they tried the gate from the yard to the street, they said that it was very difficult for even them to open it, let alone a very small child, the oldest child being only 4 years old. And when they interviewed all of the children, who will be testifying, by the way, in the home, allegedly, they were asked about a certain day, the 19th, when the family allegedly was going Christmas shopping, and they were dropping the children off at Grandma's house in Bakersfield. That would be Trezell's mother. And they asked the children if Orin and Orson West were in the car that day. And one of the children allegedly said no, and that the reason they were not along for the trip was because Orin and Orson cried a lot. And so the parents did not want them on the trip. But the children were unclear as to where the children were. But police believe that the children weren't on that trip because they were never living in the California City home. They believe that whatever happened to these boys happened back in Bakersfield months prior to Trezell and Jacqueline moving into their new home. But let's get to what the oldest child allegedly said, the 10-year-old. He stated that Orson made it to the California City home, but only for like a day. He stated that Orin died in Bakersfield back in September. Bombshell right there, because I think this is what we heard or we read in that affidavit about them having a child involved in the crime. Because listen, that child says that he woke up in the middle of the night back in September and he saw the little one throwing up. Or little one, I mean, he was the older of the two, but I'm saying old one as in like this poor little thing. That Orin was throwing up and his color drained from him and he passed away. He stated that Jacqueline was the one there. He only talks about Jacqueline in that moment, but then says that Jacqueline and Trezell had a conversation with him, stating that he could never tell anybody what happened because he and all the other siblings would be taken away forever. And I think that is what we have in that affidavit. I don't think it was about them helping per se to do anything to the child, but that this child was basically forced to keep the secret of the crime, that the child witnessed it, knew what happened, and was not allowed to tell anybody. So, according to this child, the child passes away, but that Orson is still alive and well until they move to the California City home, and that child doesn't know what happened to him after that, but that he only lived there for like a day. All of the children were told that he went back to live with his biological grandmother, but the oldest child says that he did hear a loud thump in the night in the California City home on or around the first or second day that they lived there, and then he never saw the child again. This, in some ways, this actually fits what I've kind of always thought was, and I think a lot of you did too, was that the first child likely died as the result of a beating or something. Something happened to this child. And it probably was something related to one of the parents, because otherwise, why wouldn't they have reported it? So maybe Jacqueline, lost her shit. Maybe she did something. Maybe she beat the child. Maybe it caused internal injuries. Now the child's thrown up, whatever. The child passes away. They panic. They cover it up. Now they have a dilemma because we have a birth sibling of this child living with us. The child is going to get older. The child is going to know that they had a sibling. The child is going to know that they at one point lived with the Wests, even if that child is given up or like whatever ends up happening. They have to do something with this kid. There's no way. This kid is going to sink the ship if they're keeping a secret about the sibling. And Christmas is coming. Christmas is going to mean lots of people are going to be around. Lots of people are going to be asking, where is Orin? And if you have one of them, but you don't have the other one, what are you going to say? Only one of them went back to live with their biological family? That would make absolutely no sense. They're both around the same age. Why would the state take one child back and give to the biological family and not the other one? So they need to come up with a story, and they need to do it probably before the holidays, which is now right around the corner, because when they decide to come up with this outlandish story about the two children roaming away, like that, while he's bringing firewood in the house, never to be seen again. This is on the 21st of December. So we are right there. We are right at Christmas. So, what's horrifying, what's beyond horrifying is, like, what did they do? What kind of conversation did they have with each other? Okay, we have this child that's now passed away. What are we going to do with the other one? How does that conversation go down? How do you formulate a plan? My guess is Jacqueline is probably primarily responsible for the death of Orin. That's my guess. And Trezell covered it up for the sake of the family, to protect Jacqueline and not lose his other children, especially his own biological children. But I think when it comes to the second child, I think it's going to be Trezell that's 1,000% responsible. I think that he did something nightmarish to protect Jacqueline, and in his mind, to protect Jacqueline and the rest of the family. I don't think that we're going to hear that Jacqueline is going to be involved in that second one. Yes. Did she know about it? Probably, most definitely. But did she know the specifics? Or was it kind of like, I'm going to handle it? You're not going to know anything. I'm going to handle it. I don't know. Because a lot of people wondered when they got arrested if Jacqueline would turn on Trezell. And I always thought, no, because I think she's responsible for the first one. Statistically speaking, mothers are much, much higher statistically for child abuse than fathers. They spend more time with the children typically. They are under more stress when it comes to the children typically. I think that she spent a lot of time with all of the kids. I think that, this whole idyllic thought of living off-grid, homeschooling, and all of this other jazz, I think was probably not quite the reality that she was living. And I think that she probably was pretty heavy-handed with those kids. And I think that she went too far that night. And I think that she fatally hurt Orin. And I think that Trezell went into cover-up and protection mode. But the thought, and I'm not justifying any of it, but I'm saying, like, okay, like you can formulate that in your head. But the thought then of coming up with a plan to get rid of the second one and carrying it out as an intentional act is so monstrous and so hard to wrap one's mind around. I mean, my God. So, as this trial moves forward and we learn the details of all of this, I think it's going to be very emotionally charged. It's not going to sit well with our sensibilities. It's going to be something that is going to be so hard to believe is real life and fact, and that this really happened. The thought that this poor little 10-year-old was knowledgeable about what happened that first night and had to keep it quiet is just so upsetting. I can't even imagine, what this poor kid has gone through, keeping that secret and then being removed from the family, and, now having to testify against the parents that, he was keeping the secret for. It's all so hard to believe. Tell me your thoughts so far on what happened in the opening arguments. What has come to light, and what are your thoughts moving forward? Without a body, do you think that the state is going to prove this case? What else do you speculate is going to come out in terms of evidence? Other than the word of a 10-year-old, what else is leading the police to believe that they have concrete evidence that Trezell and Jacqueline are actually responsible for the deaths of these children? And do you believe that either one ever made it to California City? We heard from the police that or in the press conference, sorry, from the prosecutor, that they don't believe the children ever made it there. 10-year-old says one of them did, but not for long. And what about the extended family? Do you think that anybody else was aware of what happened? And how is that going to come out? Pretty sure that Wanda is going to have to, Trezel's mom is going to have to testify. Allegedly, she said on that car ride on the 19th that she did not see the boys in the car. That's no shocker. We all, saw that video footage where we counted the little heads, and there definitely was not 6 children getting into that van. So we're going to stick together here, and we're going to ride this trial out together and, see what else unfolds. And I will talk to you soon. Okay, bye.